when you use the term guidelines, I want to make sure that these aren't seen as rules, hard and fast rules, because every company is unique when it comes to CSR practices. You can't have 10 rules that if they apply those, their CSR programs will be successful. So in terms of these guidelines, the first one that I would say is imperative is that CSR is seen as a tactic, is not seen as a tactic or an add-on. That it can only be effective if it's part of the overall corporate brand. So it needs to be holistic. It needs to be supported by the CEO. It needs to be supported by the board. And the board needs to be aware of what CSR activities are going on. And they have to have a culture that supports CSR. So when a board is selected, whether it's direct board members or indirect board members, they need to understand that the organization will always value CSR. The other point to remember is that CSR problems are not part of this PR realm. So a CEO cannot use CSR, as I said earlier, to get out of problems or use it to spin. Your stakeholders know that your motivations are for profits if you're an organization. They know that NGOs have a purpose in fundraising. They know governments are elected by elections. So that at the same time, they also understand that you as an organization are there to make profits. However, your stakeholders must also understand the value that CSR can give to a company's worth. And examples like Tata and Gates, as I've mentioned, are examples that show that CSR can actually benefit the assets of a company as well. And they also have to understand, companies have to understand that a CSR platform, whether it's environmental, whether it's social benefits, is a long-term game. That it has to be part of the business plan of the organization, and it has to have long-term commitment. It can't be seen as something that's brought in for a short period of time to gain publicity, to sort out an issue, and then the company goes back to exactly what it was doing before. Companies need to make a commitment to CSR, and they need to see that commitment all the way through. The second guideline I've suggested that companies don't confuse CSR with PR or spin. And the reason why that is because NGOs, the general public, governments, they're all aware now of the media game. They understand how the public relations work. They understand how the media works as well. And to not be transparent or to position CSR as a PR initiative will come across, and the public will understand that. Especially now with social networks, with blogs, with citizen journalism, a company can't hide behind CSR and use it to promote products or services. See, people who buy into a brand now, they look for evidence to support a company's claims. So if a company makes promises on a CSR level, whether it's environmental or social, they have to back up those claims that they make as well. And the whole discussion, CSR and NGOs or the general public, shouldn't be seen as a battle between different stakeholders. All different constituent stakeholders have a vested interest in benefiting the issue that they're supporting. And if you take a company like Apple as an example, they've chosen in some parts of their business to support the environment. They are positioning their product as an environment-friendly product. They're working with NGOs who support environmental causes. And they're going out to consumers with a green message. All are in it together. All are sharing the same messages, the same discussions, and agree that that element of the CSR is what makes Apple an environmentally friendly company. So CSR isn't a means to attack or counter-attack an interest group. And some companies that we've come across use it as a way to get back at, whether it's Greenpeace or Amnesty International, that if they have a CSR program in place and they can show that they contributed X amount of dollars to a cause, that gets them off the hook. The fourth element is that no one expects an organization to do everything, and no one expects NGOs to be able to do everything. If the resources of the organization and the NGO can be combined, then the public, the consumers who are interested in the company, will support that cause as well. There's a role for corporations, there's a role for NGOs, there's a role for governments, and there's a collective responsibility to provide collective actions. And finally, the guideline that we express the strongest is that when companies are working in CSR practices, that they be as transparent and act with as great a humility as they possibly can. Again, going back to the example of Tata, there are so many different CSR initiatives that they are working on that they never communicate, that most people, even people connected with the company, will never know about. And they do this because they are not using CSR as a way to grow their company, as a way to benefit their brand. Some of this comes out in the media, some of this will be understood. Things like gesture code is well known and well documented. However, some of the initiatives that they work with in rural healthcare or research into particular illnesses is never publicized, and they will never do that as well. And that's the humility that people value when companies are working in CSR activities. They don't want to hear a company always talking about the fantastic work it's doing and how without it things would never be the way they are. Some companies are very guilty of doing this, and even progressive companies like Google have fallen into this trap, where they talk about their commitment to the environment and they keep hammering this message home as though people want to constantly hear it. It's a message that has to be used selectively and carefully. And what we, as a final note, what we say is that it's best to let other organizations do the talking for our companies. Whether that's an NGO, whether it's a consumer group, or whether it's citizen journalism. If a company, if the company talks about the great that it's doing, it can come across as arrogant. If individuals, if members of society, if an NGO validates the work that that company is doing, that is much more valuable. So when we talk to companies, when we counsel them, we're constantly asking them to build CSR into their branding processes, to integrate CSR into their communications programs, and not to have it as a bolt-on service that is offered. And this is the advice that we've given to companies around the world, and this is the advice that we give to companies over here in India as well. I promise I won't take up too much of your time, and I hope that's been useful. Thank you for listening.
The value system is organization is very important for making CSR success. And definitely, CSR needs to be a long-term investment. The companies need to look at the long-term commitments for making it a success. And there should be a combination. It's a very valid suggestion from sir that in that there should be a combination between the NGOs and the organization, work collectively towards making the social initiatives a success, and fully supported by everybody. So thank you, sir, for your speech. And now, next we have Mr. Jai Sehgal, who is the Managing Trustee and Executive Director of Sehgal Foundation.